So, how do you beat evil? Well, psychopaths like to rule by control and fear. Okay? They want you to fear something, right? Anytime somebody wants you to fear something, hey, that's a psychopath who wants to control the public, right? They should not have a position of power. Psychopaths should not rule. Okay? And what happens when you let them rule? Well, bad things happen, like torture or the end of the world. Okay? So you shouldn't allow your leaders to attack other nations. That's the behavior of a psychopath. As first to lead every military for the first time in world history, I will fire your national leaders now for attacking other nations when they're not supposed to. The guy who leads every military is going to tell you the truth that only cowards fight with weapons and bombs. You don't use lethal weapons. You're not going to have any honor if you fight with lethal weapons. If you shoot somebody with the scope from miles away, right? You're a coward. There's a word for that. You're a coward. That's how a coward fights, right? Real men fight in unarmed combat in the arena so everybody can see who's fighting, who's the best fighter, right? Well, none of these national leaders are any good at fighting. They just like to control people. So, what is that? That is a martial narcissist, right? Even the Secretary of War, is he actually any good at fighting? Or does he just pretend to be? Hey, a real martial artist would have more restraint. You wouldn't just be attacking another nation that violates international law. You certainly wouldn't do it for Israel because that's treason, aiding the enemy. That's 2381 treason. Does Pete Hegseth know that as a Silas nincompoop? Uh, that's the whole crux of this issue. In an idiocracy, they're going to change the Department of Defense to the Department of War. That is absolutely absurd. You're living in an idiocracy where Silas nincompoops somehow have a position of power. A psychopath like Trump and Pete Hegseth or Benjamin Netanyahu got a fancy out of attacking Iran when they weren't supposed to, right? That could lead to the end of the world, though, right? Thermonuclear Armageddon, the big exchange where every nation pushes the button. So was that smart of Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump to attack Iran for Israel? No, that puts Americans in danger. What if Iran attacks America? Well, a foreign power is not going to care if they control D.C. and all its politicians. If they have gerrymandered, bribed all the Senate, the president, blackmailed politicians, or intimidated Trump with the golden pager as a gift, hey, D.C. is compromised by a foreign power. So what's an American patriot do? Well, you run martial law and you fire the president, right? You get rid of all of them if they're all corrupt, subservient to a foreign power, aiding the enemy, it's called, right? So after they attack the USS Liberty, after Israel takes out JFK and does 9/11, you're not supposed to give them billions and billions of dollars, are you? Right? No one has asked any questions about it. Hey, that just seems normal to Americans. They say Israel is our ally, right? Well, what if Israel's actually the enemy? So that's the problem. You have had government stooges saying, no, 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 Israel's our ally. They'll take out a U.S. president, assassinate a U.S. president. They'll attack a U.S. battleship. Okay? So they're the enemy. Don't you get it, America? Are you that dumb? Well, they are. You're living in an idiocracy. The American public haven't understood their founding document, the Declaration of Independence, for 2.5 centuries. Does Pete Hegseth know you're not supposed to attack Americans or other people in other countries? Because that violates their right to life from the Declaration of Independence? No, he doesn't. He is a war hawk, a loose cannon, right? He is what they call a neocon. So you're not supposed to let somebody like this lead the U.S. military. He doesn't know what he's doing. Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know the basics of his job 12 years after America ended. He doesn't know the First Amendment. When he wants to legislate, you can't burn the American flag. That shows he doesn't know the First or the Eighth Amendment. He doesn't know the right to life from the Declaration of Independence, like all Americans for the last 2.5 centuries. So you're just living in a sea of morons. Okay, Donald Trump is a moron, just like Kamala Harris, just like Joe Biden. Anybody you stick in there, if they're ignorant, you get to alter or abolish the U.S. government. Like I did as the world's smartest man 12 years ago when I started a new country in Cascadia, right? So that's what you do. That's what an American patriot would do, right? You would start a new country if DC was taken over by a foreign power, or in this case, if the majority wants the smartest to lead, and you haven't understood the right to life for 2.5 centuries, basic rights. Hey, that allows me to alter or abolish the U.S. government. So that's why Benjamin Franklin said, it's a republic if you can keep it. So what's the world's smartest man do? I create the first world army to end national conflict, right? Why didn't the boomers do that? They weren't really serious about ending war. You know, corporations and the national narcissists, they want to take over the world by force, by kinetic warfare, bullets and bombs. That's what Israel's trying to do, right? So Israel is behaving like Germany did in World War II, but they're trying to make America do their dirty work for them. We toppled the 7 nations that General Wesley Clark talked about in his memo, right? So Iran was on the last of the list. You're talking about a premeditated attack of 7 different nations, toppling them. That is wrong. That goes against international law. You're supposed to stand up to the bully as a planet, even if it's the U.S. So you all thought that the U.S. could play God and attack other nations? Well, you were wrong. If you were an American, you like to justify the behavior of the U.S., right? You like to justify why big oil gets to take Venezuela's oil, right? So that's the problem. You know, big oil's in bed with the U.S. government, stifling progress, making it so you don't have the water-powered car from the 1980s, right? They don't want progress. They don't want free energy. They want to sell their product. And they like war, right? That lets them take over another country and get more oil, right? So like Dave Chappelle doing his skit about oil, you know, that is pretty much spot on, right? So we've had parodies about this for years. And that's the crux. Big oil is a terrorist. You know, they bombed the Deepwater Horizon. That was a terrorist event. That's called ecological terrorism. So you stand up to that with the First World Army. You have to say, no, no big oil. I don't care if you think you control the U.S. government. I get to tell you no. You know, we might as well ban all big oil energy production on the entire continent since I know your behavior. Look at the Tesla truck explosion. That's terrorism.